The room was ready. The table was set. Two of the world's most powerful nations, enemies for nearly half a century, sat down together for the very first time since 1979. City was locked down. Thousands of soldiers lined empty streets. The world was watching. 21 hours later, one side walked out. The other watched them go. What actually broke down in that room? And what does it mean for the rest of the world? For 6 weeks in early 2026, the United States and Iran have been at war. It began on February 28th, when the U.S. and Israel launched a massive air campaign against Iran, U.S. bases, and allies across the Middle East. And then Iran did something that shook the entire world. It closed the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow sea channel, barely 33 kilometers wide, through which 20% of the world's oil passes every single day. When it closed, oil prices spiked, shipping slowed, and the pressure on both sides to talk grew by the hour. This is not just a Middle East story. This is a story about your gas bill, your grocery prices, and whether the world tips toward wider war. The road to Islamabad started in Muscat, Oman, in early February 2026. The two delegations never even sat in the same room. Omani diplomats passed messages back and forth. Nothing was agreed. By late March, weeks of bombing and counterstrikes had taken a heavy toll on both sides. That's when Pakistan stepped in. Islamabad had something rare: decent relations with both Tehran and Washington. Iran's foreign ministry acknowledged back-channel talks through Pakistani intermediaries, but called U.S. positions excessive and unreasonable. On April 5th, Trump threatened to bomb Iranian power plants and bridges if the strait was not reopened within 2 days. But behind the threats, something shifted. Iran submitted a 10-point peace proposal, a genuine first in this conflict. Trump called it significant, but said it was not good enough. Talks were still moving. Then came the ceasefire. On April 8th, the U.S. and Iran announced a 2-week pause in fighting, brokered by Pakistan. But it was fragile from day one. Israel launched new strikes on Lebanon the same day the ceasefire was announced. Iran said Lebanon was included in the ceasefire. The U.S. and Israel said it was not. The two sides already disagreed on what they had just agreed to. What do you say to someone who is grieving when you are the reason they are grieving? On April 11th, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance flew into a lockdown Islamabad. With him came Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy, and Jared Kushner, his son-in-law. Veteran diplomats had privately questioned the choice of negotiators. The Iranian delegation arrived dressed entirely in black, mourning their supreme leader and officials killed in the war. They carried with them the shoes and bags of students reportedly killed during a U.S. airstrike near a military compound. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. The talks ran through the entire night, 21 hours. A Pakistani source described mood swings, the temperature going up and down throughout. By early Sunday morning, Vance walked out and faced the cameras. His message was short: the talks had failed. According to a White House official, the U.S. presented several firm red lines, conditions it called non-negotiable. Number 1, a complete end to Iran's uranium enrichment. Number 2, the full dismantling of major nuclear facilities, the physical removal of more than 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium believed to be buried deep underground. 4, full reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Number 5, an end to Iranian funding for Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Iran's chief negotiator, Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf, confirmed the talks took place, but placed blame firmly on the American side. He reported that Iran raised forward-looking initiatives, but said the U.S., in his words, failed to gain the trust of the Iranian delegation. Iran's state media reported talks stalled on 2 specific issues: control of the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's alleged right to a peaceful nuclear energy program. President Trump posted early Sunday that the meeting went well and that most points were agreed to, except one. He wrote just one word in capitals: nuclear. Trump then announced that the U.S. Navy would begin blockading all ships entering or leaving Iranian ports through the Strait of Hormuz, effective immediately. What we know: talks failed after 21 hours. Blockade announced. Ceasefire technically holds. Unconfirmed: Iran's full counterproposals. Whether another meeting is planned, the U.S. framed the failure almost entirely around one issue: Iran's alleged refusal to commit to giving up nuclear weapons. But Iran told a very different story. An anonymous Iranian official reportedly said the U.S. was trying to win through negotiations what it could not win on the battlefield. An Iranian academic quoted by Al Jazeera suggested Tehran entered the talks not expecting a deal, but to show the world that Washington was, in his words, not serious. There are things neither side has told us. We don't know the full details of what Iran proposed. We don't know if private threats were exchanged behind closed doors. And we don't yet know whether the naval blockade now underway will be used as pressure or whether it becomes the spark that restarts open combat. Inside Iran, the population has lived through 6 weeks of airstrikes, power cuts, and profound grief. Families lost relatives in strikes on sites near civilian areas. The Iranian delegation carried personal items belonging to students reportedly killed near a military compound. Outside Iran, the closed strait has hit everyday people hard. Ships rerouted thousands of kilometers. Oil prices climbed. Grocery bills rose in countries that had nothing to do with this war. In Pakistan, a country that took on enormous risk to host these talks, millions of ordinary people simply hoped for peace. By Sunday morning, that hope felt very distant. Think of it like two neighbors with a long, bitter history, finally brought into the same room by a mutual friend. One says, "I'll stop fighting if you promise never to own a weapon again." The other says, "I'll never promise that, because last time I was unarmed, you attacked me anyway." For Iran, the nuclear question is not just political, it is existential. Their supreme leader was killed. Their military was degraded in weeks. Many Iranian officials point to 2015, when Iran made concessions in the nuclear deal, and the U.S. walked away from it in 2018. That memory shapes every negotiation today. This is not simply about bombs and weapons. It is about whether a promise made by the United States means anything at all to Tehran. Here is what we know. The highest-level U.S.-Iran talks since 1979 took place in Islamabad. They lasted 21 hours. No deal was reached. Here is what we don't know: whether Iran returns with a counteroffer, whether the blockade escalates, whether the ceasefire holds. One thing is clear: this story is far from over. The next 72 hours may be the most critical yet. Scenario 1, and the most likely: the ceasefire holds for the rest of its 2-week window. Both sides regroup. Pakistan keeps passing messages quietly behind the scenes. Iran's parliament speaker has not said talks are permanently over. The language from both sides, while tough, has left a door slightly open. What's next? Scenario 2. Scenario 2, medium confidence. The U.S. naval blockade triggers an incident in the Strait of Hormuz. What's next? Scenario 2, detail. Iran's Revolutionary Guards have warned that any miscalculated move will have severe consequences. A single naval confrontation could escalate faster than any diplomat can respond. What's next? Scenario 3. Scenario 3, low confidence but not impossible. Iran returns with a new formal proposal, possibly through China or Pakistan, that reframes the nuclear question. What's next? Scenario 3, detail. China has reportedly played a quiet role throughout the ceasefire process. A face-saving framework, one that lets both sides claim a partial win, remains the only realistic path to peace. The world sat up and watched two old enemies sit across a table in a city that was never supposed to host the fate of nations. They did not reach an agreement, but they did not entirely walk away either. And in diplomacy, that difference matters more than it might seem. If you want to understand the deeper history, why the US and Iran have been enemies since 1979, and why that past keeps blocking every attempt at peace, our next video tells the full story from the very beginning. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Where do you think this goes next?